Now there's a lot of cameras on the market, making it very complicated when you are buying your first one. Hopefully this video will help you and guide you to the process of selecting the camera that will suit your needs.
Yeah, so on this channel we are privileged because we get to play with pretty much everything. But we've said it before, there's kind of no such thing as a bad camera anymore. Like every camera that comes out is good, and that makes choosing that first camera so difficult these days. It used to be easy. You used to just pick your budget, buy a camera, life goes on. But it's become so complicated. There's so many brands that you got to choose from, so many models, so many price points, so many avenues that they each specialize in. And you have to try and align that with yourself. So we're going to guide you a little bit, give you some pointers on how to choose that first camera.
So the best advice I can give any first-time buyer is look at why they wanted this camera. Look at what sparked that sort of passion for photography or videography. Are you someone that wants to maybe get into landscape photography, or maybe you want to get into wedding photography, portrait photography, shoot video content creation? There's so many different aspects of using these cameras that you can look at, and like we said, some of them fit those needs better than others. So figuring out what you want to use this tool for is going to guide you into a very good direction.
Yeah, it's kind of that, just kind of getting to what interests you the most. We often have customers coming to us going, oh, I want to get into photography, but they don't really have an idea yet of precisely what it is that interests them, and that makes it difficult. It's a lot easier if you kind of figure that out, kind of have an idea of what sparks that little bit of interest within you, and then look at a camera that kind of fills that niche, or at least leans a little bit more to it than something else. So you often have, just as a broad example, if somebody comes in and they say, look, I'm really into landscape photography, I want to do incredible landscape photos and that kind of thing, then you take that information and you kind of guide them towards the correct camera for it. So you are going to be looking at something that has a relatively high dynamic range, higher megapixels usually. The same is true for portraiture, sport and wildlife. You want something that's fast, has that amazing autofocus. A lot of these things nowadays also incorporate video. So many people come in and they want to be able to, shoot sport and wildlife, but shoot video at the same time. And pretty much every single camera out there nowadays is capable of it. And you have to try and find that one camera that kind of slots perfectly into that little thing that you want to do.
Now that being said, for someone that is maybe very new in this sort of market, there are definitely cameras out there that's more sort of general, all-round good. Something like a hybrid camera, something that's going to be a jack of all trades. It's going to be good at photo, it's going to be good at speed, it's going to be good at tracking, it's going to be good at video. There are cameras like that on the market as well. And then, we can guide you to that system that's going to suit your style perfectly.
Yeah, pretty much every manufacturer has that kind of, that middle ground at the moment. If I'm thinking Canon, I'd probably go like R6, R6 II as sort of that like middle ground. Sony, you'd have to go A7 IV. Nikon at the moment, you'd have to go Z6 II, maybe Z5 even, as that kind of middle ground offering. So like everybody has it, and for a lot of people that is kind of the perfect, first step to look at.
Now Deon, this actually leads us into the perfect next point. And the cameras you just spoke about are sort of like medium to higher end range when it comes to budget. And budget is definitely important. Not everybody has X amount of money to spend on this new exciting hobby or adventure they want to get into. So knowing your budget, or more or less what you can spend when looking at your first camera, is also quite important.
Having an idea of what you're comfortable spending, I think is the right way to approach it. I'll tell you a story. I once went to buy a car, and the first question the salesperson asked me is, how much are you willing to spend? It's not about how much you can spend. It's what are you willing to spend on this hobby, and like what price point are you comfortable at, you know, without sort of bankrupting yourself or anything like that. Just where are you comfortable spending money on what for most people is a hobby. And realistically, what we're talking about here is probably people who are picking photography or videography up as a hobby.
Now let's say I do need to guide someone into the more sort of affordable spectrum of all these cameras on the market, and they would say they're into video content creation for their brand or for their startup company that they just started. Perfect camera that will fit into that is going to be the Sony ZV-E10, probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, I mean, a very, very solid choice. I'm going to go kind of similar. My only difference is that I quite like having a viewfinder on these cameras, and since Canon just kind of reduced the price of the R50 into something that is kind of where it should be and where it should have been from the start, my pick in that affordable bracket is going to be the R50. Good megapixel count, excellent autofocus, nice viewfinder on it. Pretty much for me that perfect affordable little all-rounder to get you out of the gate. So if you jump up from that sort of like affordable bracket and you go into that mid-tier, I feel like that's where it becomes really complicated for most people. And that also tends to be where a lot of people end up looking for their cameras, because a lot of people, at least to me, it feels like want something that isn't completely sort of entry level and want something that you can grow with and live with for a good couple of years to come. And that's kind of where that middle tier fits in. The middle tier is also the first point where you can have kind of specialist cameras. You can have stuff that's very video orientated, very stills orientated, or as you mentioned previously, that kind of hybrid, like do a bit of everything, you know? So if I had to do my pick in that middle tier, and I'm going to do a photo pick first, if I want to like sort of lean towards the photo side, Fuji X-T5.
It is a really nice camera.
Beautiful camera, there's excellent film simulations, can kind of do a bit of everything, but it's very much a photo geared camera. I love that thing.
So then that was your photo. What
Yeah,
about the video?
If I had to go video, I would probably lean towards something from Sony, and I kind of go, if I had to go like sort of dedicated video, it would probably be FX30.
Okay, FX30, yeah, that's a decent option. Also sort of a lower price versus these mid-tier, but it's very capable.
100%.
I would say for me, in terms of photo, probably my favorite camera for speed and autofocus tracking is going to be the Canon R6 Mark II. Very good in terms of tracking, especially wildlife. We have a lot of wildlife clients here in South Africa, and that is going to definitely be the king in that sort of mid-tier, semi-pro to pro sort of range. Video, I would also go Sony. And probably one of my favorite cameras to use outside of work is the A7S III. And we've seen big price drops in it now, and it's fitting perfectly in that sort of middle tier price bracket. King of low light, you know, very good dynamic range, and working with the files is amazing.
Yeah, can't argue with that.
Now, on some special occasions, you might have a friend or a client that doesn't even have the word budget in their vocabulary. And that's where the big boys come out to play. And there is many options that we can mention here. Again, some specialized, some more all-rounded. But I think we just mentioned it off camera, that when it comes to an all-rounder, and probably our top favorite pick, it's an interesting one, it's a new one.
Yeah, there is pretty much only one camera in the flagship line that I would pick every day of the week if I had to go out and do a job. That's the Nikon Z8.
Yeah, it is a beast when it comes to video, speed, high megapixels. It just has everything you need in one machine.
Yeah, and look, there's many options when you're in that sort of flagship range and you're sort of at the higher end of the budget. There is stuff like your Canon R3, which is a phenomenally fast camera, incredible tracking autofocus. There's stuff like the Sony A1, which is high megapixel, phenomenal video, also really good autofocus out of it. And once you go above that, you're kind of stepping into some really specialized equipment, which realistically is not going to be a first camera purchase for anybody, but you're going to get into kind of production video stuff. You're going to get into medium format for stills and things like that. So when you are talking budget, or you're not even talking budget really at that point, the range is kind of endless. There is something out there for absolutely everybody. Now, once we've run through what your interest is, kind of what your application is with this, and where your budget falls within this massive range of cameras and equipment out there, there is one more thing to consider, and that is, what's your end goal? What are you trying to achieve with this? Are you looking to be a hobbyist photographer, videographer, or are you looking to do this as a profession?
Yeah, because doing this as a career means you want to invest in yourself, you want to invest in your career or equipment. And that generally means that you will need something a little bit more professional, you know, something that's going to last X amount of years versus a hobbyist, you know, that's still learning what aperture is or ISO is. There's quite a big difference of cameras out there that'll suit those two people quite differently.
Absolutely. You kind of find that if you are a hobbyist photographer, your budget is pretty much open. You can kind of go for something on the lower end, go for something on the higher end. It all kind of is more tailored around what your interest is. Where if you are doing it as a profession, it would be more geared towards what your output is that you are trying to achieve. And 99% of the time, if you are wanting to get into this as a profession, you're going to have to be a little bit higher up in that spectrum. You're going to have to be kind of mid to higher end, depending on what the output is that you're looking for. You might even have to consider something that's a little bit more specialized, as opposed to the hobbyist who can most of the time kind of go for a more general purpose offering and kind of explore a little bit more.
So after all the topics we've mentioned and spoken about specific cameras and budget and all those things, we would just like to mention that Deon and myself are not the camera sales gods. You know, like, this is just our opinions, and we hoped that it helped you guys into maybe sort of guiding you into buying your first camera.
Yeah, and if you guys are unsure about anything, we're right here. Drop a comment down below. We'll happily answer. Or if you are in Cape Town or maybe the greater South Africa area, give us a ring, pop in for a chat. Always happy to talk to you guys. And if this video helped you wherever you are in the world, consider hitting that like button. Until next time, guys, cheers.